Welcome to Inside Sim Racing. I'm Darren Ganji, and I'm here with Sean Cole.
Hello.
And today we have a 2-for-1 for you guys. 2 hardware reviews in one show. And both of these things are wireless. Both are for the Xbox 360.
Right.
One is for racing games only, and one works with Forza 4 and with a bunch of other titles. And Sean, what am I talking about here?
Well, we're talking about a couple of things. We're talking about the Microsoft 360 wireless speed wheel, and we're also talking about the Kinect, which is eerily monitoring our moves as we speak.
Yeah, it's watching you guys too, so.
And you might be wondering to yourself, why are we even reviewing these products? I mean, it's the hardcore sim guys. But the bottom line is, this is a tool for Forza. I mean, we talked about it in our wheel buyer's guide.
And everything else, actually. It works with pretty much every racing game.
And not everybody has the room or the money to buy a full rig. So that's
and a lot of you may be using one of these to race with right now. So, I mean, that would be a step up.
And then the other is on the Kinect. And, well, I mean, not only can you drive with the Kinect, but it also offers head tracking, which is another tool that sim racers might use. And we've actually had quite a few requests for both of these items, so a little 2-for-1, like you said.
That's right, and both come from Microsoft. And we're going to start with the speed wheel, and it goes for about $60 and is available at most retail outlets. And like we mentioned, it's for the Xbox 360 only. It launched a few months back in conjunction with Forza 4. And Sean, why don't you tell us how Microsoft describes this little doodad?
Well, you take the wheel for easy motion controlled racing. With the Xbox 360 wireless speed wheel, experience realistic, accurate steering and feel every bump in the road with rumble feedback. The Xbox 360 wireless speed wheel is compatible with nearly all of your favorite racing games on the Xbox 360 and puts you in total control with intuitive buttons and triggers. It has intuitive steering with motion sensors, trigger buttons for gas and brake. It also has buttons for in-game specific functions, including the A, B, X, and Y buttons for interactions, the D-pad for navigation, and it also has the other features you'd expect from an Xbox controller, like the ring of light and the start and back button, and it actually has rumble effects as well.
Now, they mentioned that it's compatible with some games. Now, this doesn't have shoulder buttons.
Yeah.
So it's missing a couple of the buttons that a normal Xbox 360 controller would have, or even like the Fanatic wheel has. You know, that even has the shoulder buttons. It said it was optimized for most games. One of the games it's not optimized for is Need for Speed: The Run. So that's what we got from the Xbox accessories homepage. And basically the way this works is there's gyroscopes inside this thing.
Right.
So as you're turning, it's basically monitoring your movements and interacting with the game.
Okay.
And like Sean said, you can use these trigger buttons to do your gas and brake.
Right.
So, I don't know. I think that's pretty much where the pros end on this.
Well, the other thing you mentioned as the gyros, and they talk about the intuitive steering. So somehow, I mean, it knows when you're coming from left to right, and not only when you're going beyond center, but it's pretty amazing the way the thing works, actually.
Yeah, it does. So since we're going to do 2 reviews, we're just going to get right into the pros and cons on this thing. And we're going to start with the cons. And there's just really, as good as it works, there's just no precision. I mean, it's really hard to be precise with this thing.
I think it's missing something attaching it so that you can be precise. I mean, it's like, I'm not that precise. I'm all over with the thing.
And then what's the next thing that I think affects the precision?
All right, I defy you out there. All you, if you would start at the beginning of the review holding your hands like this.
Or just from now on.
Yeah.
From here until the end of our Kinect review, just hold your hands out and go like this, like you're driving.
And see how long you last.
Exactly.
My limit's about 3 laps. Yeah. So it's exhausting. It really is tough holding it up in the air.
Yep. No force feedback, which I don't know, you could have force feedback unless it was attached. It does have rumble effects, but kind of weak.
Yeah. Another thing for me, with the whole motion and everything, it gets a little tricky if you're trying to actually do manual shifting. So I found it best worked with automatic, but it might be designed more for the automatic driver anyway.
Yeah, and as far as, like I mentioned, the precision, and then there's a little bit of vibration, it's hard to get a feel for where you're at on the road with this thing, just because of the lack of all those things we just mentioned.
Yeah.
And Sean mentioned it's hard to do, a manual. So, imagine you're out here with your hands trying to drive, and then you're trying to shift gears at the same time and do the triggers. So it can get kind of confusing. And there's no shoulder buttons either.
And so again, yeah, it has no shoulder buttons. And the last con, and it's very small, it's got these lights that light up at the end, and it's kind of cool, but after a while, it kind of gets annoying, actually. I don't need that in my view.
And it almost like replicates like rumble.
Yeah, it's
so like you go over a rumble strip and this thing will light up. So I guess it's, I guess it's okay. So we beat this thing up enough. So why don't we go to the pros?
Okay.
Starting with, it's inexpensive.
Sure.
Like we mentioned, you want to go from a controller to something that feels like a wheel. $60 gets you going.
Sure, sure. Another thing about it for me is that it's very simple. So if you have somebody who's new to sim racing or just driving games in general, they're going to be able to pick it up literally and do it. You don't have to be, it's not intimidating either.
Yep. Another pro is the triggers work really well. So if somebody was handicapped, only has the use of their hands,
right.
and they wanted to give something like this a try, the triggers actually work really well.
Yeah.
To do your gas and brake functions.
Another one for me is that it actually works. I mean, honestly, when it came, I laughed, and I many a time wondered, how does it even work as well as it does?
And last couple, better than a controller, besides the fatigue factor. And you're actually mimicking wheel movements.
Sure, sure. So it's driving instead of gaming.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which would transition you nicely into a wheel.
Sure, sure. All right. So where does that put us as far as things like the rev scale go? I mean, where do we put such a wheel?
Well, we thought about it. We're not going to shabammy it, put it on our scoring system. So we talked about it. We're going to give it a 6.
So to check out the speed wheel and get more information on it, just head over to xbox.com. They've got a drop-down menu right there that says accessories. Click on that. It'll take you to the controller and remote, or click on the controller and remote page, and you'll see that wheel and you can find out more.
Next up, we're going to take a look at Kinect and the head tracking feature in Forza 4. Also going to show you how it works with Auto Vista and tell you how it worked with some other titles when we come back.
GamePod, the ultimate race rig for those serious about sim racing. Puts you in the driver's seat with all the controls at your fingertips. Be number one on the road, in the race, in the game. GamePod, the choice of champions.
Welcome back to the show, and now it's time to take a look at Kinect, or have Kinect take a look at us. And that's for the Xbox 360. We got our first look at Kinect back in 2010 at E3, and back then it went by the name Project Natal, which was sort of their test name.
Code name?
Yeah. We were wandering through the show, and the next thing we know, Jessica disappears. When she reappeared, she tells us she was filmed doing something behind the scenes for Xbox.
Yeah, and I remember she was just telling us that she was moving her arms, and then the next thing we know, there was this YouTube video. We got some footage of it.
Right.
Of Jessica. The thing not went viral, but it's got a lot of views, and it wasn't on our show, unfortunately.
No. But working for someone else at the time, I guess.
So what is Kinect, you may be asking? Kinect was launched about a year ago in November of 2010, and it's this motion sensing input device, and it's based on a webcam. It enables users to control and interact with the Xbox 360 without a controller. With the Kinect, you use hand or body movements as well as voice commands, so basically, you become the controller.
Yep, that's the tagline, I think.
I'm going to sound like their marketing man here. If any of you out there have a Wii or a PS3, it's similar to how that works, but with the Wii or PS3, you're holding like a wand.
Right.
So, but this just tracks your body movements.
And recognize your face.
Yep.
So we're here to tell you how it interacts with Forza Motorsports 4, as well as some other titles. Kinect is available currently right now for around $120, and it comes with a couple of games. Yeah, it sits right above your TV, or actually below it, and then in-game you can adjust its tilt to make it work right from there.
Yep. So, like we mentioned, we're going to tell you how it interacts with Forza 4, and there's multiple ways, actually. Voice, hand controls, head tracking, and you can actually drive with it. with your hands just sticking out
Sorta.
in the air, which is a trip how it works. So like Sean mentioned, we tried it about a year ago at E3, and honestly, it hasn't changed much since then.
No.
I mean, it's pretty much the same thing that we experienced
Yeah.
back then. Okay, so first there's the head tracking, and basically what it does is it maps your face, or the location of your face, and then it monitors your movements from left to right. So if you move your head left to right, it'll track that. And then if you move forward or down, it'll track that. So you can look around the car, check out the interior, or look into an apex of a corner, something like that.
Sort of like a track IR for anybody who might have used that, but you don't have to wear a hat. It actually uses your face for the inputs.
I'm going to start by just saying that I honestly didn't like head tracking on the PC with the track IR. For me, I think I just naturally move my head when I'm driving, even if I am on a single screen, and it didn't move when I wanted it to.
Right, right.
You know, one of the other issues we had was the setup on this thing.
Yeah, you just almost wish it used a different tracking method, because unless your head is like completely isolated, it just seems kind of hard to get it to really focus on you. And it's like, if anybody walked up behind you, it's going to mess it up. If you had too large of a chair or too many items in the background, and
Too large of a chair, you couldn't even get it to work at all.
Yeah.
If that chair was in view,
yeah,
basically this little pink bubble comes up where your head is.
Right.
You know, in the setup, and it looks like it's tracking your movement. There's a lot of adjustment. You can adjust the yaw and the sensitivity and stuff like that, and it'll seem to catch it for a second and then it loses you.
yeah.
So we didn't really have the best luck even getting this thing set up properly. And like Sean said, in a chair or any of the rigs that we had, especially like the game pod with the big alien type, you know, spaceship chair. I know it's an FIA GT seat, but anyway, it just loses you.
And the thing for me also is that even when we got it working well, it just seemed a little slow. So it's like I would really have to lead it with my head to then get the camera to pan. And that delay kind of defeated the whole purpose for me as well.
Yep. So I think that's pretty much as in-depth as we can get on it. I mean, basically, like we mentioned, it's similar to a track IR on the PC, which basically is tracking your head movements. And again, we tried everything to dial it in. You can you can make it so the black or the background turns to black, but just wasn't our cup of tea.
No, the other thing is I find it that I'm always trying to make it do something. So it's sort of like the tapping your head and rubbing your tummy. It's like you get confused what you're doing. Am I steering or am I turning my head?
Yeah.
And it's a
I
little
guess you
weird.
you could probably get used to it naturally over time.
Well,
But-
and when I found that I liked it the best was when I didn't try it all. And
Yeah.
then I noticed it actually was barely moving, but it was hardly like panning or looking into the corner.
So that's about enough for that part of Kinect. Some of the other ways that you can use it, which is actually kind of cool, is voice commands.
Yeah.
You can use voice commands to move it between screens.
Xbox. My garage.
There's like, you just get like a handful of commands. You
Right.
can't, make up your own, or there's about 10 or so that actually work. But that's pretty cool. What else does it have?
It also has the ability to drive sort of like the speed wheel, where you put your
Right.
hands out and it sees your hands, and as you turn, it knows you're turning, and it actually does work. The only downside is it would be impossible to use both of your feet at the same time, so therefore it does all the gas
All the aids
brake.
are turned on, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, I mean, if you had a big group of people and you just want to have some fun and laugh at people crashing walls, it would be kind of cool for that. Certainly not a realistic way to race, I think.
Yep. And then you can use it in Auto Vista, which is pretty cool. And this will come up in the next part of what we talk about with Kinect. It's a little clunky. You know, you got to get it. You have to have the lighting in the room perfect. You can't have lights coming from outside sources. Sean mentioned people walking by. You can't have people walking by, or they could just all of a sudden take control. And it's just a little clunky. When I say clunky, you'll move your hand and it always doesn't catch your hand movement.
Right. Sometimes when you're doing navigating, you put your hand out and you have to hold it there, and it's like, well, I could have just pressed A with the button and I would have already moved on.
Exactly.
So
that's how it interacted with Forza 4 for us. Didn't interact with any other racing games as far as I know.
no.
And then we thought, hey, we got this thing. Why don't we try some other games with it? We tried this Rabbids game, Raving Rabbids game, which is like a comedy-style game. Pretty funny. My daughters loved it.
It was hysterical, yeah.
Yeah, I have some footage of them playing. Sean and I tried boxing and another title that was just weak. Boxing was pretty fun. Sean and I realized how out of shape we were.
I'm still sore everywhere on my body.
Yeah, we're not going to show any footage of that because we don't want to embarrass ourselves. But yeah, we're pretty out of shape, we've realized, from kicking and punching at the screen. And again, that goes back to the clunkiness. The Kinect to me is clunky.
Yeah.
It wasn't picking up the movements. I have a Wii and we have the PS3 Move, and it just did not perform as good as those two, in my opinion.
Well, and even looking at the wireless speed wheel, it doesn't work as well as the speed wheel, which I'd compare much more to having like the Wii controller or the Move controller. It's not seeing it the same way, but it works in the same manner versus the Kinect. Yeah, there's always a delay.
Yep. So why don't we've talked about on the Kinect enough, and so why don't we get to the pros and cons. We're going to start with the pros this time. And it has head tracking, but
Take it for what it is.
You take it for what it is, and maybe you can get it to work right. Maybe it'll like your head shape, but for us, it just didn't work.
Sure. The other one is the voice activation. It's kind of cool. I mean, you might be able to impress somebody and be like, hey, Auto Vista, and it goes to Auto Vista. That's kind of fun.
And no need for a controller, so that's kind of cool. It's, you know, along the lines of a Wii or a PlayStation Move, but no controller at all.
Yeah. And the other one for me is when it is working right, it is kind of cool because you aren't holding a controller. So when we are doing the fighting game, you know, it's detecting what I'm doing, and that was fun. And I mean, honestly, I've never played a game where I actually felt like I was fighting, and this definitely got you in the mood where you felt like you were fighting.
It was like a Street Fighter.
Yeah.
Yeah, type game. So that's going to do it for the pros. Now, why don't we take it to the cons, starting with the word I've been using throughout this whole review, clunky. It's just not really accurate, in my opinion.
I agree. The other con for me is the reason why most of you are probably watching this, and that was the head tracking. And that's why you'd be looking at it as a sim racer, and with it being clunky or slow in Forza Motorsport especially, that's not good enough.
And then there's another big con with the head tracking right there, is if you're using a rig of any kind, I hope you have a low back seat that doesn't, you know, that the back doesn't come up anywhere near your head, because then the Kinect is going to think that you're not moving. So that's definitely a con.
And the last con is actually just how much you need to control your environment, the people walking around, the lighting. I mean, I know you can set up your profile for different lighting, but if anything changed, it's enough to make this thing not work as well as it should. And so again, I just want to plug and play, and it's not really that at all.
Nope. So that's going to take us to the rev scale. I'm going to give it 2 rev scale scores here. First, we're going to give it for head tracking or racing, sim racing.
Okay.
And Sean, why don't you tell them what we gave it?
Well, in this case, unfortunately, we're only going to be able to give it a 5 out of 10. It's just not proven yet.
No, and it's not working right. You know, maybe with a track IR with some dots,
right,
or something. That's how a track IR works. It's got some dots that it monitors, so you can run in a rig. You got to wear a hat, or.
But it allows it to ignore everything else. It's looking for those.
Exactly. And then the rev scale for other titles, we gave it a 7.
Well deserved.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, we did have some fun. My daughters had a blast with the Rabbids game, and I'm sure there's some other games out there that are a lot of fun.
And I enjoyed the fighting game.
Yeah,
and
I did
know
too.
Some people want those fitness games, and after doing the fighting, you could do fitness with this thing. I believe it.
Yep. So, closing, for $50 more, you can get a Wii. Right now, Wiis are going for about $150, and I think, and the graphics aren't as good. I think Wii graphics are $480, I think,
right.
At best. But the games are made for that, and you do have to hold the controller, but I'd just rather have a Wii for all that. And then, you know, the head tracking just wasn't doing it.
I completely agree with you. As far as, I mean, sure, it does work, but again, it's not a lot more for the Wii, and that's a system that's built on just this whole watching what you're doing.
Or the PlayStation Move, even.
Yeah.
There you get the graphics.
Yeah.
You know, and the tracking, but you do have to hold the controller, but I thought that one worked a little bit better.
I agree. I
think that's going to wrap it up.
Yeah, I think we're done with this one.
Hope you guys enjoyed our take on the Speed Wheel, and did I get a little movement going?
I think we changed screens.
I did something. Speed Wheel and the Kinect, and I'm not sure we'd recommend them.
No, I mean, this I suppose would be cool to have in your arsenal if you had a lot of people coming to your house and gaming. you know, it'd be kind of cool in that respect. But the Kinect, I'd probably make the pass on for myself.
Yep. That's going to do it. For Sean Cole, I'm Darren Ganji. We'll see you next time.